All right, this is jpeg2RAW, show number 55, and tonight we have Ali. I'm not even going to try to say your last name, Ali, because I'm horrible with saying names, and I need to stop butchering them. But Ali is coming to us tonight. He's returning from. He was back in show number 14 when we did our first HDR show, and I asked him to come back because we've had a lot of listeners since then. A lot of people joined our Facebook group, and I wanted Ali to come back and let's do a refresher on HDR. And actually, you know, HDR. Or any of our topics are things that we can continue to go over. You know, you're never going to fully cover a subject, and we get new listeners over time too. So it's always good to do a refresher and go over it again. But before we get started, you know, if you're first time listening to JPEG2RAW, we're a weekly photography podcast, broadcast live every week on our website here on jpeg2raw.com. Everything free. You can get us, if you can't get the live show, you can get us recorded on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, audio only. And any of the podcast catchers like BeyondPod is what I use. If you have not joined our Facebook group yet, that is a good place to come and have a discussion. We have a lot of active people out there, and we are now running a monthly contest. So last month we had, was it Mitchell Cochran won? And I think I have his photo here. Nope, that's not it.
They can see it now if they go to our JPEG2RAW group page. It's up at the very top.
Yeah, now I don't even know where I put it.
Oh, come on. Unprepared. Man, you and Tim tonight.
There it is.
I was here on time and prepared. Let's go ahead and take note of this, people.
Yes, you were. I was doing some last-minute preparation, and I messed
There he is. There's the picture.
There's the picture. Mitchell won. And, you know, what we're doing is if you are the monthly winner, we will put your photo as the group photo. So when you come in the group, you see that as the photo. We have a little announcement there saying that Mitchell won. We have his picture and the two runners-up. We had a good selection. 2 runners-up in our show notes for last show number 54, with links back to their work. And in addition, Stacy Jensen, who was on the show before, is offering our winners a $25 gift certificate to her stuff every month. So every month if you win, you'll get that too. So, and it's a way to encourage people to go out and shoot new stuff. So the last month the theme was summer, and you know you decide what that theme means to you. To Mitchell, that's what this, you know, it meant the beach. I guess I don't want to interpret it what he meant by that, but that's the way I looked at it. In this month it is celebration. And Mitchell gets to pick what is the topic for the following month. So I need to get that from him. So the winner also gets to pick the next topic. And you've got to shoot it during the month of the contest. So the contest right now for September is celebration. And you get out and shoot something that means celebration to you, which could be a number of things. You know, you don't feel constrained by that.
Awesome.
And let me go back to us so you can see us. Can you see me? Let me focus on me for a second.
There you are.
There I am. And I forgot to do something else. Got too many things going on. But can you see this right here, Kathleen?
What?
Not very well. You can't see it very well. Let me see if I can get it better.
Yes, I can see it.
Ali, do you know what this is?
Was this a quiz show?
This is not a quiz show. Can you see it now?
Oh, yes. When are you shipping that over? It's
I am not shipping it over to you unless you win. Whoa.
Oh. So
yeah, don't drop it.
Don't drop it. No, I was careful with that. I did not drop it. But yes, that is, we're starting that giveaway here real soon. If you go to our Facebook page now, I'm trying it a different way. I'm using something called Rafflecopter. So we'll see how that goes. If it doesn't work well, I'll start up the old way, which the old way worked really good. Okay, is Tim saying he needs to come back in or something?
No, Tim was saying that he has a big storm going on, and he's not getting a good connection, and he can't seem to get it on Google Plus on his iPad or his Android or his phone. Okay,
well, Tim, if you can make it in later, that's fine. If not, we'll press on. But the giveaway for this is starting now. If you go to our Facebook page, we have the thing that is set up for you to enter that using Rafflecopter. And I'll be sometime either tonight or tomorrow, we'll be adding it to our webpage, so you can do it through there also if you want to. And then the runner-up, I did not drop it. The runner-up, we'll give them this. This is a Kingston Media Reader USB 3.0. It's backwards compatible, so if you have a Mac and you only have something slow like USB 2.0, I guess you can still use it. And you know how this one came about, Ali, is I accidentally ordered 2 of them, but I didn't know it at first.
Yeah.
I ordered one.
If you have a Windows 7 virtual machine running on Windows 8, will that still work?
You know what's funny? You know what's funny? It actually won't. And I don't want to get too geeky, but Hyper-V does not pass through USB to so it won't work. But I accidentally ordered 2 of these, and I didn't know that. And so when I opened the package and said, woohoo, they sent me 2, I got 1 free. And then I looked at the bill, and I actually had paid for it twice. So anyway, I don't have a need for 2 of them, so we'll give that one to the runner-up. And yeah, as usual, the thing to win it is really easy. There are extra things you can do. I think the thing you have to do is like the page, the Facebook page. There's some other things like join the group, subscribe to the show that earn you extra points. But the basic way to enter is really easy. And a lot of our fans have already done that. So you just go in and say you did it. And that's the giveaway. I did have a question for Kathleen before we get to Ali. Kathleen, I know we had a show devoted strictly to you on backup.
Yes.
Have you thought any more of that? How's that coming?
I've thought a lot about it, but we just got back from vacation and I haven't had time to do anything about it. So it's still on my list of things to do.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time on backup, but I will tell you that device that I told you to buy, the device I told you to buy, this one here,
yes,
the ProRaid, whatever it is.
If I remember correctly, that's what I think I had decided to get.
I ordered a second one.
Okay.
The one I was holding up is a 4-drive bay. It is like 150, 160, something like that.
Uh-huh.
And I ordered a second one, and I've now installed it on one of my servers, and it's working great.
Awesome.
So it was really simple. I just plugged it in, and it's been working great. So I can now report firsthand that it works just fine, and I'd recommend it. So with this one, I'm buying bigger drives, so I'm going to have to spread out the cost over time. I can't buy all those drives.
I was trying to ask myself, should I spend the extra money to get the Drobo, or should I go with what you suggested? And, I'm like, how many years of a fix am I looking for right now? And I figured that what you suggested, I think, will last me as long as I need it to, especially since I've had nothing like that and been doing fine for years and years and years.
Now, do you have a cloud backup?
I do.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I do Crash Plan.
All right, great. I use a Backblaze, but as long as you got something.
Yes.
A lot of people buy a backup drive and then their home gets broken into, and it's the end of the world. Yeah. Well, good.
Right.
That's great, Lily, and I recommend that you have 2 backups. One is local and one is off-site.
Yep.
Using Backblaze, Crash Plan, something like that. I use Crash Plan also. And Jim, the guy we had on, hold on a second. I forgot to do something else. I need a checklist.
Yes. Or an assistant. Do you know that I hired an assistant back this week? It feels so good.
Let's come around to that in just a second.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Jim, the guy who was on a few shows ago from The Average Guy, the Homes Tech podcast, he did a little graph, a little chart, a little spreadsheet or whatever of all the different type of online things, Backblaze, Crash Plan, all that. So if you go out to his site, just search for Average Guy TV on Google and you'll find it. He has an article written up on all that and tells you how much it costs, how much you get for it, all that kind of stuff. If you're still looking for an online backup, that's a good place to go.
That's so nice because just doing the research takes hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Kathleen. What were you going to say a second ago?
No, I was just saying that I finally hired I had an assistant for a while there, and her husband's military, and so she moved out of town, and we had such a great workflow going, and I just haven't had anybody since then. But then, we had Ryan Brinziner come on the show, and, he had mentioned, you know, as a photographer, when you're running a business, the things that you're no good at, you should be outsourcing. And I was just like, oh, I just need to get back into having someone help me book my sessions and return phone calls and emails, and because I'm not good at that. I'm good at when I do it, but it could be a while, and you know, sometimes people want to hire you right away, and if you don't call them back, they're gone. So anyways, I called the same girl, and she lives in Arizona, so she's going to be doing it remotely for me, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to have her back because she's got already some fun projects on her plate for my business, which is great.
So Ryan's point was the things that are slowing you down that you're not good at to outsource, because you don't want those things to slow down your business, right? Is that basically what he was saying?
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it.
Well, Lee, thank you for being patient with all of my talk about Windows 7 and backing up and all that kind of stuff.
No worries at all.
So let's get back into you. And you know, you were back on show number 14. We did our first HDR show. Sure. But I want you to come back on and talk about HDR again, because for me personally, it's one of my favorite things to do. I said it in the pre-show, I'm kind of addicted to HDR. If I go out and shoot landscape, not people, but if I'm going to shoot landscape, I don't know if I want to shoot without going HDR now. Is that bad?
No. I mean, you know, it depends, you know, if you feel it
somebody
depends on
peeking in.
for, right? And hey there, Tim.
Do you have a flashlight up to your face?
It's the Blair Witch Hangout.
Oh, I was just going to say the same thing, Ollie.
Can anybody see that?
Right now.
I don't know if y'all can see that.
I feel bad for anyone listening on as a podcast. What is going on?
Yeah, if you're listening to it, Tim's just come on. I think he's come on his iPad, so it's
no, it's actually my Android. My iPad won't support this.
Oh, you're on an Android phone.
Yeah. We'll figure the Apple wouldn't work.
Hey, come
there
on.
you go.
Can you go away, Tim? Because it was really good here with just me and Ali being the Mac and Canon.
Yeah, versus Mike.
Now you're here.
He'll drop off soon enough. He's on Android. So.
Whoa, come on. Ali, I tried to get on just for you.
Teasing aside. But, you know, Mike, you know, what you're saying
I'm losing power on my flashlight.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this is not going to work.
All right.
If I get power, I'll be on later.
All
right.
right.
Thank you, Tim. See, this is why you, if you're a subscriber to the show, you want the video feed, not the audio feed. And of course, that messed up the screen section I was grabbing. But okay, go ahead, Ellie. Sorry.
Oh no, so you know, and that's perfectly fine. It just depends on the look that you're going for, how much dynamic range you have in the scene. I mean, if you want to shoot a silhouette, maybe HDR is not what you want. You want shadows. But no, I mean, I shoot. I'd say 90% of what I shoot is HDR. So being addicted to it is perfectly acceptable.
Well, why don't we start off with what is HDR?
Yes, please tell us, because I've never shot HDR. I don't understand it. I've seen pictures of it. I can most of the time spot it when I see it, but I don't know how people do it or really what it is.
So yeah, maybe if Ali, you can give us a rundown of what is HDR and when you would want to use it. Okay,
so we've all seen this picture where you've got somebody standing in front of a window, right? And either there's two photos that'll come out of that. Either one, the face is well exposed and the window is just this white blur, or the window is well exposed and the face is black, right? So, and what you've got there is a dynamic range difference or stop difference. So it's properly exposed the face, you need to be 2 stops up, and then the windows, you need to be 2 stops down. So all HDR does is allow you to blend both elements within your image. So if you think about it, your camera can only see, let's say, this much dynamic range in a single exposure, but what you do is you take these exposures, multiples, and then it just eventually grows, and then you've got all the range that you need. So if you ever taken a photo of somebody, or let's say that's a landscape like you were saying, Mike, where you have nice blue sky, but the trees don't look right, or you've got well-exposed trees and the sky's blown out, you can take the images and blend them in like an HDR tool, like let's say Photomatics or whatever it is, and you get the full dynamic range within the image.
Okay, so you're talking about f-stops. My question is, let's say that you need more than just an f-stop difference. Let's say that you need a total ISO difference. Would an HDR image support that?
Yes, I mean, if you want to bracket, some people bracket ISO, but I say by and large, most people will bracket just on shutter. The reason for that is, you don't want to bump up your ISO typically, simply because as you merge them, you will get more and more noise.
Okay.
So typically what you do is you take somewhere between 3 to 9 exposures and then blend those together.
And you're not changing aperture either, because then you have a depth of field difference which won't blend well.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You typically keep the aperture the same, keep your ISO the same, and then you take as many exposures as you need. Now, starting out, most people will take 3, but what you're really trying to do is capture the entire dynamic range within your scene. So, especially if you have windows and lights, I tell people just keep going until you've got all the detail that you want, and then you can go back, do the initial blend, let's say with 5 or 6 images, and then it gets more interesting. And you fire up.
How do you know when you walk on a scene? Are you? Let's go to maybe this one. You walk on the scene like this. Here it comes up, and you got a wide range of dynamic range here. And, and back to somebody might want to know, why do you need to do it? Well, your camera can't capture the whole dynamic range in one frame.
So this picture, for example, either the sky would be completely black and you would have the lights on the building properly exposed, or you'd be able to see your clouds beautifully, but the building would look black and dark. Yeah,
the building would probably be blown out, actually, because it's got more light.
Okay. Okay, right, I gotcha.
So are you taking your... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so this was right before a storm, and, which is, one of my favorite times to shoot. And you talk to any photographer, you got, fantastic clouds. And this was actually, I think, only 3 exposures. So,
but wow, only 3.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly.
Can you do HDR, the mixture of it, in Photoshop, or do you need to have the other programs that you're talking about? You
can do it in Photoshop. I prefer Photomatics. I think I've got a lot more control. Most photographers will use Photomatics.
I've tried Photomatics. I've tried the Lightroom plugin Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember the name, HDR Pro, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And Photoshop itself, native. And I like Photomatics by far the best out of the group.
Is it kind of like you're merging layers?
Well, you don't merge layers in Photomatics. So, it depends. Some people will say, okay, you really don't need a tool like Photomatics. You can just go into Photoshop and you can, layer the images on top of one another and then use layer masks to do your exposure blend. Sure, you can do that. I find that I use Photomatics first, and then I go back in Photoshop and will make fine adjustments with some of the layers. To, let's say I've got a window, and even though Photomatics does a great job, it doesn't always get it perfect. So you can go back in and add certain elements like lights. Typically, it's lights and windows that you need to layer back in Photoshop. But I'd say, if you're just starting out and you're shooting your first HDR, just stick to 3 exposures. Just set auto exposure bracketing, fire off your 3 exposures on a tripod, and then take it in Photomatics and give it a whirl.
All right, so let me go back. When you walk up on the scene, are you doing, now that you're more experienced at this, are you taking your camera and spot metering and going around the scene and finding out the different exposures, or do you just can tell it by eye what you think you need?
I mean, at this point, I can look at it and go, okay, you know, I'm thinking I'm going to need, you know, 6 exposures, 7 exposures. I mean, honestly, what I say is, you know, grab more than you need, and what you can easily do is just look at the back of the camera, look at your histogram. So I want to make sure that I'm going from a dark frame, where I've only got detail in some of the brightest elements, to a bright frame where I've got detail in the shadows. Okay. So if you feel like you've got that covered in 3 exposures, then great. What I typically do is, you know, shoot 3 frames and then underexpose, you know, by one stop, shoot another 3 frames, and I've got 6. And it's nice and easy. Some of the newer cameras, you know, will let you do 7 frames out of the box, or 3 or 5 frames right out of the box. Great, you know. Let me.
What do you mean out of the box?
Like, for example, the 5D Mark II won't let you auto exposure bracket more than 3.
Okay.
So,
see that Nikon right up there? It'll do 9.
That's nice.
Now, what is the difference between auto bracketing or, like, the 5D Mark III has an HDR setup? Do you know what the difference is there?
Yes, I mean, the HDR mode right in the camera, you know, I always think that you're smarter than whatever your camera is.
Okay, so that's like throwing it in auto.
Yeah, I you know, just take it off manual, do it yourself, make sure you've got what you need to create the final blend. So the cameras, they'll do an okay job, but you know, like even your iPhone's got an HDR mode. But
so using the HDR mode is the same as throwing it in auto, but saying I want you to automatically do HDR.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I imagine it's going to spit out a JPEG also when you do that.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, she spits out a JPEG in the end.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Now, are you always going -1 in your bracket?
Yeah, so I start up at -2, 0, and then 2. Okay. And then I go -3, -1, and then 1. Okay. So that's the easiest. You know, it's really easy to do. For you Canon shooters out there, unlike Canon, unlike the Nikon folks, you can use Magic Lantern, and it will do. You can do 7. I think it does up to 9. No, although I could be wrong about that. But one nice thing it also does is you can say, hey, go ahead and I want to do auto HDR. So what it'll do is it'll look at your scene, it'll grab as many images as it needs, and that's nice as well. But for me, I do everything manually just about. I think the only thing I don't do manually is autofocus, although at night I will autofocus manually as well. Just because I want to make the decisions. I do not want the camera to make the decisions. Sometimes or very often the cameras will make the right decision, but I'd say that 30 or 40% extra of the time that you look at it, it's making the wrong decision for you and can be frustrating. So
there's one thing on a Nikon that I do on this one and the one I had before it is the interval setting, where normally you would set it up to you take a whole bunch of shots, you walk away and you come back and it's done almost like a time-lapse thing. You can set that up to take one shot, and I do like a 3-second or whatever it is delay. You know, if I set it to a 7 bracket set and then go and tell it to do that one shot, it'll actually do 7, the whole bracket, the whole 7 for you. So I have the memorized. You know, I press. I can't do it now, but if I had the camera in front of me, you know, menu down, right, go, and then I step away. It takes 3 seconds, and then boom, it shoots all 7 or 3 or 5 or whatever it is shots.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I do, I'll go grab my camera real quick, but you know, with Canon, or actually with you know, whatever, but you've got these like, you know, C1, C2, C3 dials. Yeah. And I just have one set up just for HDR, so I just turn it to C1. Huh?
That's smart.
Yeah, and then it's automatically auto exposure bracketing. It's setting, you know, usually starts at f8, and white balance. I know I typically go with cloudy. You know, but that's just a starting point. Then if you throw the camera...
choose where you want to start, and then you can tweak little things versus having to set the whole thing up every single time.
Is that like a custom? Does that stand for like custom menu 1, 2, and 3?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like user registration settings. So
that's cool. You got that as a dial, because one of the first things I do when I get a new camera is I set up at least 2 custom menus, and we have custom shooting, and I can't remember what the other one is, but I set those 2 up: one for sports, one for landscape. And they're good starting points for me. but I have to go into the menu anytime I want to change it. You have it on a dial. That's
we also have a custom menu. If we also have a custom menu for shortcuts, and then there's I don't remember what's on the Mark III, but on the Mark II there's 3 different custom dial settings.
But also, I mean, if you put the camera in live view and you have auto exposure bracketing, it will shoot all 3 if you set it on a timer.
okay.
So I set it on a 2-second timer, and I actually use we talked a little bit about this earlier, but I use one of these Velo wireless triggers, and it's an intervalometer as well. So I try not to touch the camera.
Huh? Is it what as well?
It's made by Velo, but it's an intervalometer, and it's also like it's basically a shutter release.
What's a velometer?
Oh, intervalometer.
What is that?
So you can, let's say you want to shoot an exposure once every 30 seconds.
Okay.
You can have it do that. Or if you want to shoot, 100 exposures that are 1 second long and they're 30 seconds apart each, you can set that with one of these. It's
okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
I have an older one. I have this from Nikon. It does the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I haven't used it that much though.
Very cool.
So now you also mentioned that these are best on a tripod. You want a good sturdy tripod, right?
Yeah, you want to try. Now I say that in the shot that you've got right now, I shot that handheld.
Really?
Yeah, I shot that handheld. I was at the Daytona 500, and they don't actually. This was a nationwide race, nationwide 300. But anyhow, you were not allowed to have a tripod in the pits. Mm-hmm. So I just said, okay, fine. The trick is, if you're going to do that, make sure you have a fast shutter speed, so to minimize your movement.
Was this before the race?
Yeah, this was right before the race. They were still practicing at that point. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, this is fantastic. I got some good cloud detail, and I'm just going to go ahead and shoot it handheld. I don't want to say don't try that at home, but don't do that as your first HDR. Definitely, I'd say 99% of what I shoot for HDR is on a tripod.
Because you want a very little movement both in you and in the subject. So if the trees are blowing a lot too, that might cause an issue. You get ghosting happening there.
Yeah, now you can fix ghosting. And ghosting basically is like, think about it, you're taking 3 exposures, and in one exposure, your subject, let's say it's a person, is here, and then the next one is here, and the next one is here. They look kind of strange in the final blend. So there are ways that you can go into, let's say, photomatics. You can circle the area and say, okay, take the second exposure and use that exposure for the, for the HDR. Okay. So, for this one area. Mm-hmm. So you can fix it, but typically what happens is, you're holding it, and then, you're kind of going like this as you're shooting handheld. So it will kind of screw up your exposure, especially, now mind you, yeah, this is a handheld HDR, but this was taken about, noon, Right. If you're shooting like blue hour, an hour after sunset, and you're shooting 20, 25-second exposures, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Unless you're incredible.
Well, Ali, most people will say that the best time to take landscape photos is in the morning sun, or late evening sun, the sunset or sunrise, basically. But one of the things I have found is that with HDR, you can actually make gorgeous shots like this outside of those time frames.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that advice kind of came out of film, right? That you got one shot, and unless you were going to do a ton of darkroom work, but with the tools that we've got these days and with HDR, yeah, sure, you can shoot it just about any time you want, as long as you grab the dynamic range.
Because I got to imagine that this shot, just normal without HDR, would not have really captured how good it looked in person.
Yeah, you wouldn't have captured the clouds. That's for sure. I would have gotten properly exposed stands, and then the sky would have been a little boring. So.
It would have just looked flat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that HDR makes that midday shot look really good. Now, one thing I've run into, at least sometimes when I'm doing skies like this, is I get gray areas. It almost looks like there's a thunderstorm or something come through when there really isn't one there. It's like it's gray. Have you ever seen something like that? Oh.
Uh-oh. We lost
maybe he
Ali.
was patiently thinking about what I was saying, but I think we've lost him. What did he? What kind of computer did he say he had again?
Hey, stop that.
Well, while we're waiting for him, I will guess I can get the next set. No, wait, I'll wait for that to come back up. And I really wanted that answer. I was hoping when he gets back, because I've had some gray areas. I don't have an example, I don't think, for this one. I do have some examples of some others where I think I've messed up. You know, I know how to fix it, but anyway, we just lost him. He just dropped out.
Bye, Ali.
I know how to fix it, but I wanted to hear from him how he does it, because it's something that when you get into HDR, you struggle with. Maybe I'll go ahead and, as we're sitting here waiting for.
Oops, sorry about that.
Yay!
That's all right.
Just a blip there, just a minor blip.
So you did not get the. I think.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay.
You didn't get to hear what I said as you were going out. I said, "What kind of computer was he using again?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what I was saying is, as you were going out, is I sometimes get gray areas in the sky. You ever seen anything like that? It almost looks like a cloud, but it's not really. I mean, a rain cloud, but it's not really a rain cloud. It's like it's not. Yours is beautiful white and blue here, but I've got sometimes where I get gray patches, and it's not dust in the sensor. It's too big for that.
Yeah. It's like a you get like I've seen black clouds. I've seen pink areas.
Yeah.
It's like a hold on. Let me see. I think I'm getting the audio here. But typically, what that means is you've got a blown out area, or you don't have enough exposures. So, and you can go back actually to your original exposures, and I would imagine that you would see it.
Okay.
But the pink, I can tell you, if you're getting pink skies,
Yeah.
it just means that you've got blown out areas, and Photomax doesn't know what to do with it. I've talked to them about it before, but it's like, hey, you need more exposure. So.
Yeah. Well, how about we show some of your sets that you can show some examples. So we've been looking at the final products, but I want to show like Kathleen, and they're just going to scroll through, so they're not.
Sure.
They probably started off in the right order, but they're not probably in the right order now. So inside this order, and they'll go through, Kathleen and everybody out in chat, they'll go through, and you can see the different exposures he captured and also the final image here. So I don't know if you want to talk about this.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what you had kind of said about with your overexposed one. You want to make sure that there's detail in the shadows.
Exactly.
With your underexposed one, you're looking for detail in the light, like that they're correctly exposed.
Exactly.
And then with the third one, kind of the middle ground.
Yeah, you kind of want a normal exposure, and actually, this image was 6 exposures that I used there. And now, you can see if you just take one shot, you got light coming in from a window, and then you've got a dimly lit area in the background. So single exposure, you're just not going to get it.
Right.
And blending it using Photomax, you definitely. I mean, you can see it right there. You can still tell that there's light coming in through a window, but it's not overwhelming the image, and you're not getting majorly blown out areas. So.
Now, and let me pause it on this. Let me go back to that one. Crap. I got to make a change in the settings. Just a second.
No problem.
While he's fixing that, we had someone out in chat, Scott Green, mention he wanted to know how much is too much with HDR. You know how sometimes you can see a shot from a mile away and know that it's HDR and it's not tasteful, and then sometimes you're looking at it saying, is that HDR or is it? You know what I mean? Like, when do you guys think too far is too far? And
on that subject, you probably heard this too, ladies. People have told me before, that's not a photo anymore. It's just art. It's a painting. And, I'm not a photojournalist, so it is what I want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, so you have those people who are like, a photo should be a photo, or, I don't know, tempura is really the only, is the only type of painting that there should be, or art ended in the 15th century. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, you see some stuff out there that's like, okay, you really need to kind of tone it down. But going surreal is okay. It's just if the photo just doesn't make sense in your eyes, or you've got like this massive orange cast and a massive yellow here, and it just looks like clown puke, is one term that I've heard used. It's generally I mean, you've all seen those. Now, I've not a lot of people do this, but I've double tone mapped images, and I've pushed images. Even I have one image that I can think of as like a single JPEG that I double tone map, and I think it worked out. Now you can definitely tell it's not real, but that's okay.
Tell us what that is. Double tone map.
Double tone map. So basically, I double HDR'd it. So when you do an HDR, you end up with a 32-bit image. Now monitors these days can't display 32-bit images.
Yeah. So
what you end up doing is translating that over to an image that a monitor can display, and that process is called tone mapping. And you map from one color, one space to another. So what I did is I just did that twice, and you end up with a really, you can sort of tell it's kind of really cartoony, but that's okay if that's the look that you're going for, and if the image works. But what I typically see is people, taking the slider for saturation and just moving it all the way to 100%. And then, just every slider is at 100%, and you end up with just this psychedelic. I'm sorry?
It's just screaming at you at that point.
Exactly. It's just screaming at you. Like, with this image here, I want it to go subtle. I didn't want it to look unreal. But there's other images. You wanted to
show all the parts of it at the same time.
Exactly. Well, I wanted it to look, like it's a natural image. But there's other images that I have that you can definitely tell. Oh wow, there's something going on here. This is not a real photo. But
what was your double tone map, and what was the subject?
It was a street in Jerusalem. Let me see if I can.
I would say that the point of HDR would, since our eyes have a better dynamic range than our camera lens does, then I would assume that the HDR purpose is to allow the viewer of the image to see what your eye saw when you walked in that space.
Yeah.
Because if you just take a picture of it, like you said, for example, this picture, you would not see that back corner. But when you walked into this room with your eyes, you could see it all.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what you're trying to do most of the time. Although, it's kind of become its own sort of art genre where, tone mapped images it's got a certain specific look. So, and Mike, I sent you that photo that I double tone mapped that you can say, yeah, that's really out there, but that's the look that I was going for,
Okay.
I really wanted to bring out texture. So.
Well, and I also think that photography can go surreal in all genres, not just HDR. For the other family, baby, kid photographers that are listening today, you'll understand me when I say that I think many photographers go through a phase where they hyper brighten the eyes on children, and they start looking like aliens, and you're just like, there is no way that kid's eyes looked like that in real life. There's just no way, right? So, I think it just, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The person who edited that way obviously thought that that was fantastic, but I look at it and I'm like, woo, that's not a kid's eyes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the same thing with HDR.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point where you cross over from journalism to photo art, and you have to decide as you're working on an image when it is that you're going for that, right? And you got to commit to that, that's what I'm going for. But you don't do it with every image. But that's the fun thing about art. Sometimes you can cross a few boundaries. The image should still work. It shouldn't be screaming at you. I mean, in my opinion, if I'm looking at psychedelics, to me it turns me off. But sort of a hyper real kind of almost cartoonish kind of thing, I can sometimes get into that. But it just depends on the image. And typically, I like that when it's got a lot of texture, which is in the image that I just sent you, Mike.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get it right now.
No, it's okay.
And one of the things you talk about people, Kathleen, and doing that to the eyes. People can be very difficult taking photos of people with HDR. You got to be very subtle with it, and it takes some practice to get the skin tones right and get the people looking right.
Right.
Has that been your experience, Ali?
Yeah, what I typically do is I'll do the initial HDR blend, and I'll take let's say the 0 exposure, and then I'll go through and I'll remask the faces in.
So the faces aren't HDR at all. It's just what's surrounding them is.
Exactly. And
that would be really useful to me at the beach this week. Thanks for coming on now and not the week before I left.
Sorry. but I did that with a shot of the Apollo 1 crew. And it's you can actually see it on my blog. I didn't send it to you, Mike. I'm sorry, but it's I did a little series on HDR NASA Reimagine. It's a little project that I plan on expanding in the future. But I wanted to take these old images and make them to apply the tools that we have today. And I went through and did a real nice edit on kind of the surrounding areas, and then went through and just put the faces back, toned it down.
Cool.
Is that on your Google Plus account?
It's, yeah, if you look for a tribute to Apollo 1 crew, it's definitely there. It's,
okay, yeah.
I can talk about this image here that you're showing right now. It's actually, that's the before image that you're seeing there, and the next one that comes up is the initial blend that comes straight out of Photomatics, and you can tell it's a bit dark, and also it's very noisy. This is the inside of a submarine, and there isn't a huge amount of dynamic range, but I really I wanted to bring out what was there, and this is a single RAW that I did it, that I tone mapped in Photomatics, and I want to show this image for a couple of reasons. One is a lot of times we don't push our cameras. We kind of stay with an okay. Oh, I'm not going over ISO 400, but this is actually shot at 1/80 for the shutter, ISO 3200 at f4, and sometimes it's okay. I mean, you push your camera and don't really be afraid to do that, because you can recover from what you initially get out of the sensor.
So let me pull up these. So you have, I think this one you're saying is the initial one out of the.
That's straight. The first image you showed was straight out of the sensor.
Okay.
That one right there. Oh no, that's not the one before, the bright one.
The brighter one, yeah.
Yeah. There's a delay between when I do it when you see it. So there it is.
Yeah. So that image is straight out of the sensor.
Okay.
And I really did not have a lot of time to shoot. So drawing back the curtain here on photography, and Kathleen, you can appreciate this. I was in a submarine. This is a World War II submarine out in South Carolina, and I had my 1-year-old son with me. So setting up a tripod and shooting multiple exposures, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I turned around, shot the shot, said, okay, I think kind of chimped it real quick. I kind of like the composition. Great, let's go. And then but I had very, very little light. I'm shooting straight at f4 there, which is the lowest that lens could go. And this is actually out of a 50D, so you're not talking the noise reduction or the clean sensor that you got in a 5D2 or a D3.
Right.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, you can see up on the top there, it's pretty bright. You've got detail in the bunks and whatnot, but I wanted to get more detail out of it. So I ran it through Photomatics and just a single RAW, and came up with the next image that's in that series there. And that image is pretty good, but if you look at it really close, you could tell it was pretty noisy. It also was a bit darker than I wanted, and it just didn't look as clean as I wanted. But it recovered a lot of detail in the cabinets there on the top left.
Mm-hmm.
I still had this minor blown out area if you look at right behind the top of the ladder there, but sometimes that's all right. I mean, if you want to be perfectionist like I do, you think to yourself, oh man, I really should have reshot this, but I think the image still works. Sometimes the better is the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
Okay, see now, you would have been in my shoes if you decided to do this shot, but take your 1-year-old, set him on the stairs, and tell him to sit there, or he would lose his life.
Oh, that's I have a shot of him actually, and but not on the stairs. We put him inside, and before I say this, before you call protective services, the jet engines were removed.
Okay.
So it's a decommissioned aircraft on the flight deck, but of an aircraft carrier that's actually sitting right next to the submarine. But I have a photo of my son sitting in there.
Oh, that's cool.
And I told
Awesome.
off, I said, hold him because I don't want him crawling back into the body.
Right.
Oh, wow.
You might lose him.
So she grabbed him. I took the shot, and we got him right out of there.
That's too funny.
So.
And then I think this one coming up is the final one after you've done some editing to it.
Yeah, the final one was, I kind of brightened it a little bit, and then, obviously, fiddled a little bit with levels and layer masks just to kind of get the exposure exactly where I wanted to, and it's cropped. If you look at the original exposure, there was a little bit more on the left there, but I felt that was leading the eye too far. And the story here was you've got a torpedo on top of a bunk, and you've got this really cramped area, and then you've got kind of the passageway to the other section of the sub. So.
And you're doing your post processing, and after you get out of Photomax, you're doing it in Photoshop, right?
Yeah, I do a little bit in Lightroom, just kind of minor cropping, maybe adding a little bit of contrast. But what I find is it's never good enough for me. I can never just do a photo in. It's not to say I don't want the Lightroom haters coming at me. But,
Lightroom lovers.
Lightroom fanboys. I love Lightroom. But,
well, I also think it depends on what you're shooting as to whether Lightroom would work for you or not.
Exactly.
I don't think it's meant for everything.
Yeah, I find a lot of times it's good for basic stuff, but I really feel like I need more. I need more control. Yeah, so there's that shot. And, I don't know if you've got the original there, Mike. I think it's the image before or after it. But, I really wanted to do something to... this is the crew that died in the fire on Apollo 1.
What? These guys?
Yeah, this is the Apollo 1 crew. Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. And they died on the launch pad.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a short in the capsule, and at the time, what had happened was, I'm a NASA geek, but basically, when Grissom was part of Mercury, the hatch on the door had blown out when he landed, and what they decided to do to avoid that from happening is that the hatches would open inwards. So there was pressure that built up, and there was no way to open the hatch, and they all died on the accident. It was basically a routine test on the launch pad. And so I took the original image and supplied some new techniques and just some of the tools that we have these days. And this is a project that I want to do a Kickstarter around at some point. I've got like 2 or 3 images. I know I got one of the Gemini missions, and I also have so that's the final edit there that you're seeing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But I have the Apollo 11 launch, and I have one of the Gemini missions, and it's kind of a proof of concept. Like, okay, how far can we take this? This is something I'll be working on.
How'd you even get a chance to shoot these guys?
Oh, no, I didn't shoot them. It's not my original shot.
Oh, okay.
I'm not old enough. No, I found the image archived, and I just said, hey, let me work on this.
So you were working just off of like a JPEG from online or whatever?
Yeah, I basically grabbed a JPEG online and just, give it a good edit. So I think there's so many great photos and from fantastic photographers, but just the tools weren't there at the time. So now we've got them. It's so easy to do this.
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right, let me go back to the photos. To another set. Okay.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love this one.
This was a difficult shot. So again, middle of the day, you can see there. Okay, so there's kind of maybe the typical shot you would grab, but
nothing special.
Yeah, you got the well-exposed plane. Now, if you got filters and whatnot, I probably could have made it work. But who's going to do that?
Yeah.
And there's your overexposed shot. Now, I know I gave you Mike the original blend, and if you pause on this one and you take a look really closely, you will see probably 100 small dots.
Yes. What is that? Is that dust on your sensor?
Yeah, I was on a week-long vacation. I was running through. See, we did Atlanta, we did Savannah, Georgia. We were in Charleston, South Carolina. We were, I mean, just all over. And I had a ton of sensor dust. There was nothing I could do about it at the time. So, and actually, right before this, I was also having issues with my shutter button, and the camera went in just the professional services right after. But you know, this is sometimes, you know, HDR is not, you know, hit 3 buttons and then you're done. I mean, obviously you have to get the composition just right, but you know, sometimes you just gotta take the extra mile, and this was several extra miles. And normally I don't, you know, the adage in photography is only show your best stuff, but sometimes it's good to kind of look at the intermediate steps. So this is what came out of Photomatics. And I was like, well, you know, this is a good starting point, but it's not really where I want the image. So,
I'm getting some, are y'all getting some feedback?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good here.
Yeah, and if you've never seen sensor dust, because Kathleen, I know you shoot stop down, I mean, wide open a lot. You shoot.
I've seen sensor dust. Trust me.
Okay, so if you shoot wide open a lot, you're not going to, even if you have sensor dust, you're not going to see it much. As soon as you start to stop that thing down, I don't know what you were at here. You know, f8, f10, maybe something.
Probably 8 or 16.
Yeah,
if I remember right.
You will start to see sensor dust that you didn't know you had the more you stop it down. And Ali, I think you're about to go into something that I've always noticed is, for one thing, in Photomatics, when I got it pulled up and I'm working in it, it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
But then the final output that I get, and when I pull up in Photoshop or Lightroom, it doesn't look quite as good as what it looked like in Photomatics. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, there's a bit of a translation loss between, you know, what you see and, you know, what you get out of the tone mapping engine.
Yeah.
I have noticed that. You just kind of try to get it as close as you can, but almost always, you know, you need to add contrast and bring back some saturation. Absolutely. And, you know, almost always, for me at least, I find like, okay, it's pretty good, but I need to go back in and mask some part of the image back in. Yeah, so that's the final.
Awesome.
Yeah, that to me is a dramatic. I mean, that if you'd have stopped at with the Photomatics output, it may have been okay, but this really takes it over the top.
This is dynamic. The other one wouldn't even have caught my eye, to be honest with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you got to put in the effort. You know, and this is. You know, I'm fanatical about detail. I care very much about detail, and you know, I look at my images sometimes for hours on end. You know, as I'm working, and I don't just sit there and stare at the screen, but you know, I'm looking at every part of the image to make sure that I've got it exactly where I want it. And yeah, I mean, you have to have that commitment. And this is actually, I had so many layers in Photoshop that I actually had to have 2 Photoshop files. One was, you know, this is the initial edit, and then bring it back in, and then, you know, keep going, because the file was getting so big that as I was saving it, it was just not getting there. And I can tell you just a couple of things. Like if you look at the nose cone there, you can tell that I brought some of the detail back using a layer mask. And also same thing with the, you know, with the star right underneath the beginning of the wing there. Yeah. Some of those were blown out, so I had to go back in and layer. And I know I denoised the image, and I went back and denoised it again for the sky, because I was still getting a lot of noise of the sky. And you know, the 50D is not actually the cleanest. Doesn't give you the cleanest output, but the you know, the D2, the D3 are just, you know, fantastic. I'm getting some really clean images, but you know, so I had some challenges there. Even shooting ISO 100 in a bright day, I was having some challenges with just the image coming out.
Now, how many shots was this? Was this 3?
I believe that one was 9.
9.
Yeah, because you have a white plane, you got a blue sky, you got a black or gray aircraft carrier, and then you've got the green and the black underneath the aircraft on the left. So, you know, I just kept going. I said, you know, sometimes it's just better. I know when it's a bright day like that, I grab more, and I just keep going until I feel like, okay, I look.
That way you have all the options.
And you know, I think most people would have thought the opposite. It's a bright day, so I don't need to grab as many. And then you're often shocked. You know, you come back. I shot at ISO 100. You come back, you bring them into Photomatics, and you've got a lot more noise than you thought you would have because you shot at ISO 100.
Yeah, well, you should do your denoising first. So, you know, either use you know, Topaz or Lightroom. You know, do your denoise first and then send it out.
Why do you denoise first?
Well, because, you know, what Photomax is going to be looking for is, you know, contrast, detail contrast. So if you've got, like, you know, noise, it'll pick that up and say, hey, I should enhance this. This must be some kind of detail. Now, you have denoising tools in Photomax as well, and it does a decent job. But, you know, you want to get the cleanest image going in that you can.
So if you're denoising in Topaz denoise or in Lightroom, are you then again also using the denoise that comes with Photomatics?
No, I usually keep that off at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question for you that's a little bit off topic about the denoising thing.
Okay.
So with Lightroom, everything is sliders, and there's not necessarily a before and after. So how does denoising and contrast work in Lightroom? When you up your contrast, are you upping the noise? Because the noise down at the bottom, I mean, you could go down and denoise it first and then come up, but does it make a difference in Lightroom? Because there's not really a before and after in Lightroom. Yeah,
so, okay, so you can do, so, okay, for simple images, you know, and you can, there's no before and after, though you can zoom in and see it, and you got your little window there that you can do as well, but what I find is I use Lightroom sometimes for denoise, but honestly, most of the time, I will go into Topaz denoise, and you've got a lot more sliders where you can just adjust the noise in shadow areas. You can adjust the noise in highlight areas. You can adjust color noise.
What are you using, Mike?
You know, I actually have the trial of Topaz, and I've been using it some too. I like, you know, Lightroom is good too for basic stuff.
Sure, yeah. There just comes to a point sometimes where you're like, oh, I'm just not getting, Lightroom just is not getting it, or I'm losing too much detail. Yeah. And then, you know, I will use Topaz. And sometimes what I'll do is I will denoise. So, okay, so I'll do the initial denoise, right? And then I'll go into Photoshop, and then I'll denoise it again, but I will only denoise certain parts of the image. Or same thing with sharpening. I'll only sharpen certain parts of the image so I can get exactly what I'm looking for.
You know, with Lightroom 4, you can actually, with the brush, adjustment brush, denoise with the adjustment brush now. So
I haven't tried that. Okay.
You can paint on denoise. So,
is that smoothness?
No, you know, smooth. If you're doing negative clarity, it will do some of that too. But one of the settings now for the adjustment brush is to denoise. Okay. So, like, if you had a sky, you wanted to do the sky, you can just denoise the sky and not denoise the landscape.
I haven't used that adjustment brush yet.
The adjustment brush in Lightroom 4 did add a few things. One is the denoise, and the other one is you can paint on white balance.
So my question still remains: if you adjust your contrast in Lightroom, are you also adjusting the contrast of the noise?
I think.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think anything you're doing with the contrast or with the sharpening, which is actually just creating contrast on the edges, I think, you're going to enhance noise.
Yep.
Okay. But in Photoshop or something like that, if you denoise first, flatten your image, and then add contrast, it's not going to add contrast to the noise because now the noise is not being seen anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, typically what I do is I'll open the image, duplicate the layer, and then duplicate the layer again, and then denoise. So I've got the original, then I've got a copy of the original, and then I've got the denoised, and then I'll go from there.
So, Kathleen, maybe I misunderstood what you're saying. So you're thinking in Lightroom that even if I denoise, that when I go to do the contrast adjustment, it's still going to intensify the noise that was there originally.
I get your question now.
Is that what you're saying, Kathleen?
That's what I'm wondering. Like, should you even be messing? I mean, you want to do your contrast, whether you up your contrast slider or whether you do something on your histogram thingamajigger. You like my technical terms?
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's going to be upping noise, like, should you even be doing it in Lightroom at all? Is that a worth?
No, I think Lightroom is, and I'm not going to speak for how the Adobe engine works, but I would imagine it's smart enough to apply the denoise before applying the contrast adjustment. You know, I'm not quite sure how that works.
Okay.
But,
I think you're right.
I know you have a contrast slider as well too.
I think we need to have a guest from Lightroom come on the show, Mike Howard.
Yeah, you can ask him that question. I don't want Adobe calling me tomorrow going, "What did you say?"
Right.
Maybe I should try and get Matt Kaskowski, or however you say.
There you go.
Yeah.
That we'll have to try that. That'll be difficult. But you know, I think that
RC, I can. Well, I don't know.
That'd be awesome.
I mean, he doesn't. It's not like I talk to RC every day, but. Huh?
I just stumped the geeks, didn't I?
No. Well, you know, I'm not going to speak for Ali, but I'm not an expert in hardly anything. I consider myself an expert maybe in Excel and accounting. That's what I get paid. That's what I get paid to do.
Right.
Outside of that, I'm not going to claim to be an expert. But I think that in any of them, you're not going to completely remove noise. So if you're in Lightroom and you do the denoise and then you do sharpening or you do contrast adjustment, you are going to be slightly tweaking that noise and bringing it out. And that's you're going to do the same thing in Photoshop too. The noise doesn't, unless you can really smooth it out, you're not completely getting rid of the noise.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody, and Sarah Jackson in chat said she always denoised last. So, you know, the order of how you do things is sometimes up for debate. And like a lot of things with photography, there's never one clear answer. But what would you recommend as your stage? At what point do you denoise and what point do you sharpen?
I denoise first and I sharpen last.
That's what I've heard too.
That's what I do too.
Yeah.
But
otherwise,
there is no first and last in Lightroom. That's why it confuses me.
Because otherwise, you sharpen the noise and then you try to get rid of it, and you really don't. So.
You know, I guess I always thought that the way Lightroom had organized things was you work from top down.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's not what they intended. I think I had heard that. It's not the way I work. It's not the way I work, but I thought I heard that somewhere. And
I
now
always work from top down in Lightroom.
I know, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think sharpening is on top of like.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Noise.
It is.
So,
that my theory there doesn't hold.
But see, like in Lightroom, I don't think there's this happens first and this happens last because it's non-destructive. I think it just happens.
And that's what I was saying is I wonder if it's not smart enough to actually know that, you know what I mean, that you've got both these sliders going on and it will,
one counteracts the other. Whether you do it first or last doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you know that is an interesting thought. However, you can tell some things are reacting on top of each other because I think if you took a paintbrush and painted blue and then painted red, I think it would create purple.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm just saying I don't know with the detail slider. I'm not quite sure how it applies it in what order.
Right.
So I'm not sure.
Interesting.
Well, I don't know.
Right.
I want to, if you don't mind, I'd like to get to some of my images and you critique them and tell me. Some of them I picked that I intentionally know there's an issue with. Now you had the church here. Did you want to say anything special about the church before we?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, one thing it's not maybe exclusive to this church. Now this church is in South Carolina. It is I think it's Georgia, just outside of Savannah.
Okay. And
it's one of the very few churches that was not destroyed or one of the buildings in the town that was not destroyed by William Tecumseh Sherman. But you know, what I like to do with a lot of my images is not just say, "Hey, here's an image, doesn't look pretty," but I like to really research, you know, my image, what's going on, you know, why is it significant? So you find a lot of times a narrative in my. It's not very long. You know, I don't write volumes on each image, but I do like to give details. So that's something on my blog. If you check that out, you'll see just about every image I create. So.
It is interesting to know a little bit about the subject of what's in the shot.
Sure.
All right, so let's go. Let me see if I can find one that I was thinking about.
Sure.
All right, no, that's not it.
Okay, so you're doing the whole like Master Chef thing where you're intentionally throwing something in that you know you did incorrect to see if you can catch it.
No, I'm going to point it out. I'm going to point it out.
Stump the photographer.
Yeah,
I'm going to point it out.
That is not potatoes.
One of the things I had happening at first that I think I've gotten better with, but this is an example of where it's still there. If you look at the tree line, the top of the tree line, especially on the right, you can see some haloing, some white line in the tops of the trees. I think I've gotten better with that now, but in this one here, you can see that. And how do you control that? How do you stop that from happening? What have I done wrong to cause that?
Yeah, there's a couple of sliders. Well, the one immediately is like smooth and highlights that you can use to bring that back. So it will decrease the level of the HDR effect in highlight areas like the sky. Another thing is you can decrease the strength. Okay. And you say, oh, well, it decreases it globally, and I don't like that, da-da-da-da. Okay, fine. Tone map the image twice, and then get what you want in the two areas, and then blend them with layers. Oh, well, that takes too long. Well, yeah, it does, but, you got to be willing to put in the work, Right. Can I just do it with one slider? No, there's like no make-it-work slider anywhere in any tool that I've ever used.
Yeah, I think it definitely takes some trial and error to get HDR to look right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I tell, I teach workshops a lot, and I tell my students is, you're problem solving. You're a photographer, and yes, you're an artist, and yes, there is a base amount of, technical knowledge that goes into it, but a lot of what you're doing is problem solving 90% of the time. Yeah. And then, well, how do I get a good shot? Well, you have to just keep going until the shot that you're looking at matches what's in your brain. So,
and as we're on the hour, so now as we keep going, and Ali tells me what I did wrong. If y'all have any questions out in chat, feel free to ask them now, and we'll pass them on. But we're going to keep having Ali tell me where I went wrong.
No, I mean, I think this image looks great, and the only thing that popped out at me, and it's not really an HDR thing, and I don't think there's anything you could have done about it.
Let's go back to it.
Oh, yeah.
Where was it? There, right there. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I didn't see that one. I was looking at.
It's coming back. There. This one.
Yeah, that one. And I don't know if you could have ever really stamped it out or gotten rid of it, but if you look at the top left,
yep,
you got that big tree outcropping there, and short of cutting it, I don't think you could have done anything. But that it's kind of a larger element in the foreground, but what you really want the eye to go to is the water. Yeah. And I think the eye's bouncing. My eyes, at least, is bouncing up and down. But I say from an HDR blend, I kind of like it. And I can't see the top of the trees to tell you if there's ghosting in the size of the image that I'm looking at. But a lot of times, with trees, you need to go in and kind of grab one of the original exposures so you don't get them moving, especially right at the tops.
I actually went to this spot, scouting a spot to shoot really early in the morning, some fly fishermen. I wanted to get some fly fishermen and get some fog in the water and everything like that. And this was probably 1 in the afternoon, so it was really bright. And I said, you know what? Let me try an HDR here and let's just see what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
And also that water is deceiving. So this is like the middle of July. That water is freezing cold, and it's probably 5 feet deep right there. It looks like it's hardly anything at all, but I almost fell into that thing as I'm moving around. And there's also a nice little current too. So I'd have been able to just wave goodbye to my camera gear that was still sitting on the rock as I floated down the river. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the other thing about looking at it is you see that cloud back there. It's the cloud all the way on the left, right? It's
I'm coming back.
Oh, sorry. Because I can still see it in the.
Yeah, there's a delay.
Yeah, but the cloud there, I think you have a blown out cloud there.
Yeah, this was only a 3-shot HDR thing because I really did not intend for this to turn out to anything.
It looks great, I think. I like it.
You know what's funny is I put this on Flickr, and there's a sister one to this one, looking in the other direction, and I had a hospital in Savannah, I think it was, who wanted both of these. They probably wanted them free. Wanted both of these to put up in their lobby, and I said, sure, $100 each, and I never heard back.
Oh man!
But Kathleen, I think I mentioned to you, I don't do this for money. So if they don't want to pay the $100, they don't get it. Fine.
Right. That's right. I remember when you got the request for that, we were talking about how much should you say, and I was like, well, is the money important to you, or is hanging your work important to you? You're like, neither. I'm like, charge $100.
Yeah, I could. Early on, I would have been impressed to say, I got a picture hanging up in Savannah Hospital. I guess now where I'm at, I could care less.
Yeah, whatever.
You know what? And that's okay. It's okay to say no because then you have a clientele that will expect you to be at whatever price point you set.
Yeah.
So it's all right to say no if you're not getting what you expect. That's fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I thought I think I grabbed the wrong one. This one actually used to have really bad halos around the top, but I got it much better.
Yeah, this one's interesting.
You should see the actual water here. It is a green, scummy pond.
Really, you can't tell that.
No, and that's what HDR has done here. Is I got the reason the trees are that got cold color is the sun's coming up, and that's the sun, the morning sun hitting that. And there's still a little bit of fog left on the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I took this shot as Kathleen was giving me a phone call, and we went into this long discussion about something. And I wanted to catch it maybe 10 minutes before this.
How many times did I say OMG before you got off the phone and were able to take your picture?
It took a while. It took a while.
I think you could have added a little bit more contrast and maybe underexposed it, and maybe a little bit more saturation. I think you could have gotten away with it.
Okay.
Especially in the trees. Maybe not so much in the sky. Did you use a polarizer by any chance?
I
think you might have.
I think I might have.
Huh?
I think I might have, but now I'm not sure. I don't think I did because it was early in the morning.
Okay. Because you can see, I don't know, it's like a really, really blue area. If you go up the middle of the image and there's like blue sky, you might have done them with a little bit less saturation there. Yeah. And then, like I said, a little bit more saturation and a little bit more contrast in the trees, but not to. I mean, it's not like, oh my gosh, what were you thinking? You know, I always feel very self-conscious when critiquing somebody's stuff in public. You know, usually, I have friends who post stuff on Google Plus, and I know they're saying, "Hey, critique my photo." I always send them a message. So,
yeah, you know, that's fine. It's
yeah.
That's one of the ways you get better is if somebody just tells you, "Hey, that's great." What did you get out of that? You need somebody. What you really want to know is what did I do right, what did I do wrong, and I need both of them.
Sure.
I guess you need both of them because if I did something right and I didn't know it and I did it by accident, you want to here's what you did right, so that you can if you didn't know it, you know it, and you definitely want to know what you did wrong.
Yeah, I mean, from an HDR perspective, I think the image works. I mean, minus those two little things, but from a compositional perspective, I wonder. I mean, I want to see more sky. My eyes telling me is like, hey, I've got a lot of water, and I know what you're doing. You're going for the reflection.
Yes.
And you've got it there. I just wonder if maybe you went down lower and maybe, got a little bit more of the sky.
Well, now we're going to let you critique one of my favorites.
Oh, no.
But tell me what you think.
Okay.
So let me give you a little background on this one as you're looking through it. This is
that's awful.
Yeah,
sorry.
This is a local park. This is the one where Kathleen and I almost met.
Almost.
She's driving out, I'm driving in, and so I got here about 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half before sunrise, and I wanted to get the sun right as it was coming over the top of those buildings. There's right where that sun is. There's buildings.
Yeah.
I wanted to get it at that peak where it's just popping through and get the little bit of the sun rays and the little sunspots, just a little bit of that at that particular moment. And really, that moment was a minute. It did not last long at all. And
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's some glow the glow that you see behind the buildings is from the sun, and maybe a minute before that, it was just a big glow behind that, and a minute afterwards, it was just the sun in the sky. So anyway, go ahead and tell me on this one.
Well, okay. And again, I don't think there's not much you can do about this, but the sky is kind of boring. I mean, there's really not much there. And again, I think you could have probably sharpened the buildings a little bit more.
Okay.
But from an HDR blend, you got the dynamic range. You could have gone for more contrast, or sorry, not more contrast, but more saturation in the sky, especially on the top right.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't exactly tell. I'm like squinting, but I'm not quite sure if that's haloing or how even the sort of the transition is between the buildings or even the tree on the left. I think you got some haloing there as well.
Maybe I should send you the.
You're talking about like a rim, like an angel.
Yeah,
That's what haloing is. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a very common sort of artifact that you get with HDR, if you're not careful, is a halo around your subject, and typically says, okay, this person overdid it, or they didn't have enough exposures, and it's something that just anybody who's like editing the HDR magazine or something will tell you, we won't accept your images if they have halos in them. And you tell beginners, and not to say that you are Mike by any stretch of the means here, but you tell beginners, hey, you've got haloing, and then tell you, oh, I was going for that, and usually
and what's difficult in this one is to see, there's probably is some haloing. What's difficult in this one is there is a glow happening back there, so from the sun, so it's difficult for me at least to see what is real, what is not real, what is caused by the sun, what is caused by post-processing. You're definitely right that I wish that this was a clear morning.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been much better looking if there was clouds in the sky. I love it when there's clouds in the sky.
Sure.
And it's one of my locations that go back. What's that?
I love the lens flare. I think the lens flare worked there.
Thank you. All right, so let's go to one more. This is from that was sunrise. This one is going to be sunset.
Okay.
Same part, just from the different angle.
Okay. I have a feeling, or it looks to me, just from what I'm looking at it, I think you might have over-sharpened the clouds.
Okay.
And that tends to happen. It's, a lot of times I'll go back in and then soften up the clouds, just use a layer mask or, paint 50% gray, depending on how do you sharpen, by the way? Are you using a high-pass filter? I'm just going to type it. Oh, I guess it would help if we were actually saying something, right?
Now I can hear us. I can hear us now.
Okay.
Wow.
Awesome with broadcasting.
That is weird. We've never had that happen before, where the video was still going, but the sound just cut out.
I'm not sure where you cut off, but I want to hear about your nonprofits again.
Yeah. Thank you guys out in chat for letting us know sound cut out. Ali?
Yeah, so I run a nonprofit called the Bethlehem Christmas Project, and we go to Israel and also the Palestinian territories every December. We deliver Christmas gifts to orphans, children with special needs, children suffering from post-traumatic stress, and also survivors of terror attacks. And we will deliver both in Palestinian refugee camps as well on the Israeli side. And actually this year we're going to do a workshop, and that's going to help us raise some of the funds that we need for the Christmas gifts. It'll be a photography workshop. So
awesome.
So we'll be in Jerusalem, Nazareth, Bethlehem, and we've still got some spots open for that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Very good. So if people are interested in that, they can find out about that on your website?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I have got it on my Google Plus page. That'll probably be the easiest way to find it. Ping me on Google Plus. If you also go, we've partnered with the Giving Lens, and that's they've been doing workshops in Nicaragua. I know they've got one coming up in Jordan. So if you go to thegivinglens.com, you can, I think it's thegivinglens.org or tgl.org would be the best place to go. And if you click on workshops there, actually, I'm giving it all.
And we'll put that, your Google Plus, your website, and the Giving Lens.
Awesome.
All those links in our show notes. I guess Tim's gonna have to re-listen to the show to do show notes. I mean,
seriously,
how else?
He's not slacking.
He doesn't expect me to do that, does he? We'll see if he actually subscribes to the show.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, if you go to thegivinglens.com and go to workshops, you can sign up there for the Israel workshop.
And when is that going to be again?
November 8th through the 15th.
Okay.
So, and the plan is to stay there 2 weeks this year. We're watching everything happening over in the Middle East right now, though, and kind of evaluating where things are. But so far, the plan is still to go.
Okay.
So.
All right. Any questions in chat before we head out? If you have not tried HDR, it's definitely something to try out. Try it on landscape and not on people until you get a little bit better at it. There's a guy in our Facebook group who's been doing it with people, and there's some of his stuff it's a little, I don't know, it doesn't go good with people. Others, it's pretty good. It's getting pretty close that you can't tell that it's HDR. Just little bits of something, but he's getting really good at it.
Awesome.
If folks know, you can drop me a line. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, Google Plus. Pretty passionate about it, and I do love helping out. So feel free to ping me. I've looked at plenty of folks' images and behind the scenes and said, hey, this is what I think. I won't call you out in public and make you look bad or anything like that.
Oh no, Ali is one of the nicest people I know. I was in a hangout with him one time that he accidentally made public. Do you remember that one?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Let me tell you, when you make a hangout public, you have no idea who's going to come into the hangout.
And yeah, tell me about it.
That was an exercise in diplomacy, I can tell you that.
Kathleen, you got the G-rated version of what could happen.
Really?
Yes. We had, what was it? He called himself a ethical hacker or something like that. And he started naming our names off and saying, why would you talk to me like that? I know you have kids, and I publish their home address and all this stuff. It was like, what? The world?
Yeah, it was the last time, and I think probably the first time I ever did a public hangout. And I think maybe when I first started on Google Plus, I probably did a public hangout or two. But I'm so used to when I publish something like whatever I put up on G Plus, public extended circles and your circles is where it goes out. And I did that with a Hangout. It was just a huge mistake.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, if you ever Hangouts are awesome. You know, we use them here for the show.
Yeah.
It's an awesome way to collaborate, but it's you got to be careful when you're going to do it to the whole world, because you never know who you're going to get on there.
Yeah, I think our Hangout, I think episode 14 was I think the first time you did Hangout, right?
I think it is. I think it is. The one thing, you know, I love the Hangout. We've never had video problems with the Hangout where it was just like Skype was just spinning. But the video quality, I went back and used Skype over the weekend, and the video quality in Skype is still better. But to me, there's no perfect one answer. The thing about Hangouts is you can easily share your screens really good. The person talking pops up onto the top of the screen. It does that switching really well. Everybody's always a thing down at the bottom. Where you don't have that same control with Skype, but the Skype video looked really good.
Yep.
So, but you know, for now we're sticking with Hangouts.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yep. All right, Ali, thank you for coming. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and you know, thank you for the feedback on my photos. And we talk a lot in Google Plus.
Sure. Yeah.
So we keep in touch there. Now, if you're listening to the show live, and before you go to leave, down below us talking, there's a Google little ad. Don't click on it quite yet, but as you go to leave, click on that, and the show gets a little bit of credit. Also, if you're going to buy any kind of gear, it doesn't have to be camera gear. It could be a CD, if your people still buy those things, or a book, or anything like that. We have an Amazon ad on our site. Click on that. The show gets a little bit of credit. Or from Adorama, the show get a little bit of credit, and we use all those funds to buy things to give back away. The show is a nonprofit, so we're not looking to make money from it, and we know that as you get into photography, there's a lot of expensive gear. You know, you got the camera, the lenses, the flash cards, everything costs money. We talked about Photomatics tonight. That's another $100. Everything costs money. So, because Kathleen and I and Tim are not doing this for money, we do it for the fun of meeting people like Ali and talking photography. We turn those funds back into giving stuff away. So if you're going to go buy anything from,
I'm not getting paid.
all right, I'll double your bonus.
Thank you.
Was 2 times 0? So we turn that back around and give that away. And this one is our first one that we're giving away from those funds. So make sure you go and click on that. And I bought that camera used from Adorama, and we don't talk about it a lot, but we do have an Adorama affiliation too. So you can click on that before you go buy something from there. I can't do it. They caught me the first time I did it with Amazon. I wanted to test it to see what kind of credit I get. And they gave me credit, and then a day later took it away.
Oh, really?
They're smart enough to figure out that I send something to myself. So we'll put all of Ali's links in our show notes, and actually we have Kathleen's now links in those too. If you know, Kathleen is a wonderful photographer, and if you want to see some of her work, we have her Facebook page or her web page, all that stuff. I don't think you're on Twitter, but we have those things at the bottom of each one of our show notes.
Awesome.
With that, thank you everybody for coming out and chat, and we'll
it's
go
nice
ahead.
Meeting you, Ali. Finally.
Yeah, it was great meeting you. Great meeting you. Hope we can talk more again.
Yes.
We'll go ahead and end the live show. Just hang out for 1 second, guys.
Good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.